Good afternoon, guys, from sunny California. This is Lucky Lynx. So I'm going to explain a couple things here. A lot of you have mentioned the change that you've seen in the videos that I've been doing. For one thing, I've been doing videos every day, and I've been increasing the kind of information that you guys have been asking me for. People have been asking about the spirit world, so I have opened up about that. That's usually something that I only talked about privately with clients, and I have a great deal of experience in this area, a lot of which I will not be discussing, but there are some things I can and will discuss. So I've been opening up a little bit about that. I've also been challenging quite a great many of the quote-unquote teachings out there right now, because people have been asking me ever since I started this particular this YouTube. This is not the first YouTube channel I've done. As I think I said to you guys before, I used to do cemetery stomps, where I would go through a haunted cemetery in Chicago and I'd take people through the cemetery. I'd take my motorcycle and I would go through the cemeteries and I would show people the haunted cemeteries and the mausoleums in Chicago. And I even wrote a book on haunted cemeteries, so I have a great deal of experience in that arena. And but people have said, ever since I started this channel, how do you get past these blocks? And there's a lot of stuff that's being taught out there as laws, natural laws or spiritual laws. And I think that I finally got tired of people asking me, how do you get past the blocks? And I said, that's it. I'm just gonna start being open about it. And because it's not popular to say some of the things I'm going to be saying. But let me say why I'm doing this. When I started out, I read back in Chicago when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and I was working in a bookstore, and I started to get involved in a lot of the New Age stuff. There were some New Age magazines that came out back then that were free, that in all the areas where I used to hang out, where the artists hung out, you'd find these things. And I started to read a lot of these concepts that formed the basis of things like the law of attraction and stuff like that. And as many of you know from the videos, I've gone through lots of workshops, lots of training. I did the Reiki stuff. I did hypnosis training, but the hypnosis training that I did I have 10 years of mind training, 10 years of studying with a hypnosis master. So I didn't just go for a weekend. Originally I went for like a weekend certification kind of thing, but then that really made me go, what is this? And I wanted to know really deeply about the human mind, which is why I'm always bringing the mind into things here. But I'm going to tell you that I followed those concepts that they're still teaching right now, and they led me into some very dark places. They left me very stuck. They left me in relationships and situations that I regretted. And when I was finished with them and I finally met my master and I started studying in the Tibetan lineage I'm studying, I started to see exactly why those quote-unquote laws were BS. And I became very angry. I became very angry that those people were teaching these things as truths and that they were profiting off of them, and they really didn't yield any results. So that is why I have been so vocal and active in exposing some of these things that people have been asking me. Well, how do you get rid of negativity? How do you get past blocks? Well, let me tell you that a great many of these spiritual teachings that are being promoted right now as love and light, as spiritual truths, are the very negativity that people are trying to get rid of. Here's why. There is something that is happening in the way they teach these things. First, they love bomb you. Okay, now any of you who've ever read or studied Lifton's Thought Reform, it's all about cults and how you build a cult. And it has to do with how the human mind works and how you create a cult. In this particular case, these religions are love bombing you. They are telling you that you are divine, that you are spirit trapped in a human's body, that you are all love, that you are unity. They're flattering you. They are bombing you with love. And then in the next breath, they are telling you that your impulses as a human that don't fit in with love and unity are lower vibration. So do you see what they're doing? They're love bombing you, and then in the next breath, they're telling you you're not good enough. For those of you who understand the human mind, this is how you create an addict. Those of you who are out there talking about narcissism and victims and all that stuff that like to go around these quote-unquote spiritual communities, that's how you do it. You love bomb someone. You flatter them. You tell them how great they are. And then in the next breath, you tell them that they are not worthy. That is how you get someone to be addicted to them. So these particular spiritual paths are less about you actually finding your core self, which is the start. So enough exposing that stuff. Let me tell you one of the things that's going on. There's a core self, and one of the reasons why I love the tarot so much is that it deals with pieces of story. Your mind works in story, okay? And it recognizes these patterns. So for example, this guy, the hermit, it recognizes this guy as the networker. And you'll see him in the world all around you, okay? This guy, the magician, he's the guy that gets things done. Well, I just had him, and now he's slippery. He's slippery. You recognize him in the world around you, right? And then there's El Diablo. You recognize him in the world around you, right? He's the scapegoat, and he's sometimes the liberator, and he's sometimes the thing that chains you down. So sometimes he's the guy that addicts you, gets you into addictions. Sometimes he's the guy that liberates you. Sometimes he's the habit that holds you down. These little things, what people don't understand is story is so very powerful that you have been trained through your education and entertainment on how you're supposed to respond to life by how you encounter these particular characters. They shape you and your view to see yourself as a particular character in the story of your life. As that particular character, you respond the way that you believe in your mind that the story is supposed to go. It is so powerful. The story is so powerful. Now, and for those of you who know, I started out as a writing professor because I grew up reading myths and fairy tales and fables, and I thought, God, there's something to this. This is power here. This is really powerful. This stuff can heal. There were times when I'd had such a bad experience growing up, and I'd go and I'd read a story, and it made me feel better. And it changed my whole life, and I wanted to know why. That's what I wanted to share with people. So when I sit down with people, I actually show them how to organize the pieces of their life into a story, because usually when someone comes to me, they say, hey, I'm so confused about life. So I figure out what the story is that's going on right now, and then I help them try to make sense of the story so that the story can go forward and be a successful story. If they want it to be, but not everyone wants to be, depending upon what character they are or what character they're using at that point in their story to get whatever effect their unconscious wants to get, or in some cases their conscious mind wants to get. I know I'm going in a lot of directions here. But what I'm trying to say is that there are huge things that can help liberate people, help people, make people feel better, make people grow, make people go on their journey and get past blocks. But it doesn't happen when someone is love bombing you and flattering you and telling you that you're perfect as you are, and then in the next sentence they're telling you that impulse that you have of confusion or anger or vengeance or whatever it is that's coming up for whatever reason. And I'm not judging that. I'm saying these things happen to people for all sorts of reasons in their life. Believe me, I know. And they tell you that that's not worthy of the universal love that they've already bombed you with and said that you are and that you're part of and that they are the representative of. You see what they're doing to you? They're yanking your chain. They're telling you you're perfect, and in the next breath they're telling you that you're flawed, and that if you want to get back to your perfection, you have to go to them. That's an old trick. There's a lot of churches that have done that to people all along. I saw it growing up in the religion of the family that raised me. I saw it growing up in the schools that I was in. It's an old trick. We're perfect. You're flawed. Come to us. So, there is a core archetype that we're all born with. And what happens is that core archetype, that story character that you really are, usually what happens by the time we get to like 5, 6, or 7, someone has knocked us off that archetype or that story character that we are by trying to convince us that we're another story character. And we spend the whole rest of our life trying to get back to that story character, and we don't even know what it is. But none of these so-called laws, spiritual laws, or spiritual masters, and that's another thing. It's kind of annoying seeing all these people set them up as they're all masters. It's like, wait, didn't you have like a job in marketing last week? Now you're a spiritual master, or last week you worked for a Fortune 500 company and now you're a spiritual master. Why? Because you made money? They set themselves up as masters, and not one of them talks about that core piece of you that you're longing to get back to. Because that's really what happens when people are asking me about negativity, when they're asking me how to get past blocks, is because they've lost touch with that core piece of themselves that they are. Either they gave it away, someone discouraged them from expressing it, someone took it. Usually it's some combination of all three. And people spend their whole life trying to grab onto something else to fill that spot where that feeling of emptiness is. They use relationships, they use addictions, they use jobs, they use identities that they grab onto. And they use these spiritual paths where someone says, believe me, you're perfect just as you are, except those impulses that you have, well, they're bad because they're not part of the whole. They're not part of the agenda. That's how you create an addict, and that's abuse. I'm Lucky Lynx, as always, wishing you success and good fortune in all that you do. Now, I've just thrown some really big concepts at you, and I realize that. And I'm doing it in an introductory light because I want people to start to ask themselves, what really is holding them back? El Diablo. These are usually concepts that I deal with people in readings, and they're not concepts that I'm just going to put out there in videos in full explanation. But I do want you to know that this is some of the stuff that's going on, okay? And you kind of have to know what you're doing with this stuff to be able to help people get back to those pieces of themselves. And it doesn't seem or look to me that that is what, and from my experience, going through all that New Age stuff from the time I was a kid, literally a kid, a teenager, that stuff does a great number on your self-esteem. It does a great number on yourself because there's a lot of judgment. Everything in their world is white and pure and light, and you can't measure up. You cannot measure up to it because that's not natural. The sun behind me is really beautiful, but so is the moon, and both of them serve different purposes. One entices and hides and creates romance. The other warms and embraces and nourishment and provides nourishment. Both archetypes, both story pieces are really important to our full, rich experience. And those are just two. Those are just two of the stories that can be found in here. There's another concept I'm going to talk about tomorrow, and that's the concept of using witchcraft, magic, and sorcery and pretending that you're not, and trying to make those things look bad while you're actually trying to embrace them yourself. If you want to get a reading with me, 779-302-8009, or you can email me at conjurehope@gmail.com. If you'd like to take my tarot class, I have a tarot class. I have an intermediate to advanced tarot class, and if you want to learn about the archetypes in a basic, hit me up. We'll start a basic tarot class. No one's asked me to do that, but I'm willing to start a basic class for folks. I can show you how to unlock these things in ways that no book ever has. I have a Lenormand class. I have two of them. I have one that's a Grand Tableau class and one that's a basic Lenormand class. I have a Mexican Loteria class, and boy, are those students making strides with those Lotteria cards. You have no idea how powerful those little bingo cards are. And then I got one in crystal ball reading, and I got one in playing cards. So if you'd like to take one of my classes, contact me and I'll tell you all the details, what the course fees are and everything. They all happen in a secret Facebook group. Each one happens in a different secret Facebook group, and then you get a one-on-one coaching session with me. So I hope you guys, I hope what I explained here actually made some sense and shed some light on stuff. And remember, there is a core to who you are. There is a core archetype to who you are. And most people go through their lives feeling lost because they never really realize what that core archetype is.